Welcome to a very special episode of the Pathways to Prevention podcast. This episode is coming to you directly from the 67th session of the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, C&D, at the Vienna International Center in Austria. Today's episode is not just special because of its incredible location, but also due to the extraordinary story of resilience, recovery, and hope that we're about to share with you. In this episode, we have the privilege of sitting down with Tracey Ford, a woman whose life story is a testament to the human's spirit's power to overcome adversity and emerge stronger and more purposeful. I was introduced to Tracey here in Vienna, and from the moment we met, I knew her story as one that needed to be shared with the world. Her journey from a tumultuous upbringing in Sheffield, UK, to becoming a beacon of light in the recovery community is nothing short of inspirational. Tracey's narrative takes us through the darkest corners of trauma and addiction, teenage pregnancy, and the struggles of living within the grip of drugs and a coercive relationship. Yet, it's a remarkable turnaround initiated by her determination and a pivotal encounter with a compassionate individual that truly captures the essence of this episode. Tracey's story is a powerful illustration of post-traumatic growth, showing us that it is possible to find a way out of the darkness and into a life filled with purpose and service to others. Since taking those brave steps towards recovery, Tracey has dedicated her life to supporting others on their journey through her work at the Sheffield Recovery Community and her involvement in a significant women's research project. Her experience highlights not just the importance of support and resilience, but also the profound impact of being true to oneself and harnessing the therapeutic power of storytelling and reflection. So join us as we explore Tracey's incredible journey, recorded on location amidst the buzz and activity of C&D, where the world comes together to address, discuss, and deliberate on drug policy, prevention, treatment, and recovery. It's a setting that underscores the global importance of recovery stories like Tracey's and reminds us of the collective effort needed to support those on their path to healing. Tracey's voice is one of insight, hope, and unwavering courage, inviting us to reflect on our own stories and the limitless potential for transformation within us all. So let's get ready to be inspired by Tracey Ford, a true embodiment of resilience and a guiding light for many, as we dive into this unforgettable conversation. The vision: a world where all people live free of the burden of drug abuse. This is the Drug-Free America Foundation's Pathway to Prevention podcast, where we are committed to developing strategies that prevent drug use and promote sustained recovery. Thank you for not only tuning in, but your continued support and efforts to help make this world a better place. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of C&D to chat. Before we really get into sort of post-traumatic growth and unpacking, sharing your story a little bit, I wonder if you would just introduce yourself.
So my name's Tracey Ford. I live in a town, one of the 4 largest cities in UK, Sheffield. I've been working in the recovery field now for over 27 years. I fell into this line of work by chance as a result of post-traumatic growth, I now believe. So I've been invited here by Mulca because I've been involved in a women's women's research project, looking at recovery through the lens of a woman. It's been really, really, really successful. I chair Sheffield Recovery Community Forum, which brings together lived experience recovery organisations together to raise awareness about recovery and that there's life after drugs, and just trying to celebrate recovery a little bit more.
Marvelous. I just want to ask questions about the Recovery Center, the project you're doing with Mulca. But I first am curious, would would you share a little bit about kind of what led you to doing this work?
Oh, wow. I grew up in a very working class family. I didn't finish my education, to be fair. I got expelled a number of times from school. I didn't like school. I didn't like rules. I didn't like to conform. Was brought up in a fractured family. And yeah, there were a lot of dysfunction growing up, and I tended to rebel against that. I fell pregnant at 16, gave birth at 17. Couldn't wait to become an adult, but then I became pregnant, and adulthood when what I was expecting it to be. Mm-hmm. It turned out the relationship that I was in was I didn't know it then, but extremely coercive and controlling. And even though there were no violence there, I think that were harder for me. My partner turned to drugs, started to sell drugs, and I basically got drawn in. I'd never, ever, ever considered taking drugs in my life. It'd never been on my radar at all. But I turned to them as a bit of a coping strategy, you know. I was basically I called myself a bit of a drug mule, you know, because it was me who could go around and do drug deals, get money in, etc. Yeah, but then it all came crashing down. I got sectioned in a mental institution with what I didn't know at the time was drug-induced psychosis. And the rest is history, basically. I was discharged. I was in there. For me, being sectioned was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And people look at me really weirdly, you know, how can that be really good? You know, because I remember when I walked in there thinking, either did I get in here? How did I deserve this? And unfortunately, I was discharged without any aftercare. And I returned back to my partner. But for me, that respite in that space gave me a lot of time to think and reflect without being distracted by everything. And it were a few weeks after being discharged, I just thought, I can see all patterns emerging. I'm going back into the same things here. I need to get out. Mm-hmm. So I fled that relationship with my children. But I didn't just flee the relationship. I had to turn my back on everything. I'd developed quite a big network where I was buying and selling stolen goods, you know, that generated income. I'd never had an official job before. So I earned my money just by turning tricks. But I knew if I continued doing that lifestyle as well, mm-hmm. that I'd end up ultimately going back to drugs again. Mm-hmm. So for me, it were more than the drugs and the relationship. I remember sat in this masonette. I got no furniture, nothing. And I remember my sister saying to me, you go back and get all that furniture, you know, from your house and what have you, you know. But that were his leverage and control again. A way of trying to drag me back. And for me, I was just kind of like, but that, you know, I can buy furniture again. Mm-hmm. I can't replenish my mental health. I can't buy my mental health. And that's far more valuable to me than having nice furniture in a house. Mm-hmm. I did struggle for a while, for a little bit. And it were at that point I reached out to a GP. I were having anxiety attacks, so I'd not had no drugs since I was discharged, but I started having anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and I genuinely thought, I can't do this. I'd gone from being, right, that's it, I'm done, mm-hmm. and I was really starting to waver. And I went to go and see a GP to give me some drugs. Can you give me some drugs just to calm my nerves? Mm-hmm. And you know what? That GP was life-changing. he sat me down, Dr. Shrecker, he called him, and he sat me down and he said, start from beginning and tell me everything. And that man sat with me for over an hour while I opened up, I explained hospital, the drugs, the relationship problems, and he put his hand on mine and said, actually, you don't need any drugs because you've done incredibly well up to now. What you need is someone to lean on, and I'll be that person you can lean on. He quickly sort of arranged for me to have a CPN, a community psychiatric nurse, who used to come and visit me just twice a week. But she didn't, it wasn't what she did for me, it was how she did it. So, just simple tasks and goal setting, making babies, little baby steps. And it's, just wallpapering a wall with some cheap wallpaper, £1, a roll wallpaper. I remember finishing decorating. It cost £2 to decorate this full wall. And I couldn't wait for her to come because I was so proud of what I'd done. Something really simple. But she really encouraged me. And I don't know, I think she saw something in me I didn't see in myself at the time. And I think that's really important, and that's something I live my life with now. I come into contact with so many people who I can see the potential in them, but they can't see it in themselves. And I just think throughout my journey, so many people have seen something in me that I haven't seen in myself, encourage me. I want to be able to do that to other people. So that's my mission in life.
I heard several powerful things in your I'll call it your condensed story. Because I know there's so much more there. But the first big aha or ooh that occurred to me was when you were admitted and you had that time to reflect. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that reflecting, that act, that experience, what was that like?
I feel a bit emotional now thinking about it. I was horrified because the place I was in had a reputation, for being the mental institution. That's where all nutters went, and I remember walking in and thinking, how the hell have I got here? What happened? At the time, in the run up to it, my family had noticed that there was something wrong, suspected something was wrong. I'd lost a tremendous amount of weight. I was walking around with a Bible. I won't put Bible down. I've never had faith, but, I've got this Bible. I actually thought I was John the Baptist. Yeah, it were a crazy time. But I think I don't know, I suppose it was the morning after, and I just didn't want to associate with anybody in that hospital, I was still trying to process how I got there, if I'm honest, I think. And I was just suffering a lot of hurt and pain because all my life I've tried to be something I've not. I've tried to be a good daughter. I've always, failed and let my family down. And I just felt like I'd monumentally failed at life, at being a mum. I've got 2 kids, for God's sake. Threat of social services, finding out that I'd been sectioned, what had happened to my kids. On the outside, to surface, I know people might have made assumptions and, oh, she's a bad mum and things like that, but actually I've always had a big heart, but I've had to grow up and be tough, and resilient and look after myself and protect myself. And sometimes that might look aggressive to some people, but that was my coping strategy. And And it had been for years and years and years. And at that point, it were almost like all the masks I've been wearing. I was just like, I'm sick of being this compliant partner. I'm sick of being everyone's gopher. You know, I don't know who I am, but I want to know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That takes me back to my couch in my 1-bedroom apartment where I had a big turning point in my healing. And I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I knew I needed to get back to being the real me, the authentic me. But I had lost touch with that person. Didn't even know who it was. So I sat on my couch and had a journal, and I just reflected, just went back trying to uncover the real me. And I was excited to hear you say, you know, the power of your self-reflection and how that almost kind of started your healing journey. What tips or advice could you offer folks as it relates to the power of, or how to go about reflecting?
I think I've always been really inquisitive, and I know I have. As a young child, I used to get told off for asking questions all the time, you know, because I'd ask challenging questions. So I've always been quite inquisitive, but I suppose that inquisitive nature, I've never used that inquisitive nature in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I only actually started really journaling. What you don't know is I lost my father, who was a big character, really well known, had a rough reputation in Sheffield, succumbed to alcoholism. And it was at that point, whilst caring for him, that I started journaling. I thought I'd learnt a lot about myself until, and I thought I knew a lot about addiction. You know, I'd worked in field for over 12 years since then, but nothing had prepared me for caring for somebody with an alcohol addiction, let alone my father,
mm-hmm.
who'd gone from a big, gregarious guy to looking like a prisoner of war camp. It were sad to watch. I started picking at night, in evening when I couldn't sleep, my head would just be spinning round and round and round and round and round. And the only thing that helped was getting up, going downstairs. I got an A4 notebook, and I would just sit and rant.
Mm-hmm.
I could swear, I could say anything I wanted without no retribution or nobody hearing me. That were my safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of journaling.
Mm.
So my journaling actually started when I was looking after my dad.
Mm-hmm.
When he passed, it stopped because the stress and challenges obviously stopped when he passed away. But there was I always call it's like a niche that wouldn't go away.
Mm.
And everybody used to say, Tracey, you should write a book. You should write about books. My dad was such a big character.
Mm-hmm.
You should write a book. You know, he used to say stuff like, you know, Dad, you need to take your paracetamol. I'm not taking paracetamol because it's effing bad for my liver. You know, really, you know, or, you know, Dad, have you thought about recovery group? I'm not going to sit in a group full of men talking about emotions and what. He just recovery weren't an option for him, you know. And I had to learn, that's one of the things what's really helped me is once I stopped trying to force recovery onto him. This is a guy who grew up in pubs. His lifestyle were in pubs. He actually said to me once, what have I got without a drink? And I couldn't argue with him because his social network, his life, you know. I'm too old to be turning new tricks or making new friends. I don't want to make new friends. And that were a big learning curve for me. It's just though it went against everything I believed in because I felt like I was, what's the word? enabling him.
Mm.
I really struggled with whether or not I were an enabler, because actually that can be seen as a bad thing. And that's where writing just really helped me to thrash it out. And if people want to call me an enabler, they can do. The reality was, if my dad were going to drink, he were going to drink, out of my control. But I had a choice, and I could either walk away or stay, and I chose to stay. And I'm really, really glad I did, because after years of being rejected by my dad, I finally got that relationship with him I'd always craved. So it was kind of bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but the writing, as I say, everyone said you should write a book, but I ain't got a Scooby-Doo where to start writing a book. What would I write about? And then I thought, I'd like to, so the writing just really started off just journaling. And for me, I call it my therapeutic pen. This morning, I was like, how long have I got before I have to get ready? I've got 20 minutes. I have to set my timer, because if I don't, I could be sat there an hour later and still be writing. I was really anxious. I felt a bit overwhelmed after travelling yesterday. And I've got a website called Have a Word with Yourself. And that's a Yorkshire slang. It's called Have a Word with Yourself. So if, what's up we are, have a word with yourself. That's what people say. So I always say that's what I'm doing. I'm constantly having a word with myself.
Mm.
And it's as a result of having a word with myself that I've learned to tune into what's really happening for me. You talked earlier on about authenticity and, being in that hospital ward. I ain't got a clue who I were, let alone be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I've, do you know what? For me, writing, I'm still the same person, but I am the most authentic I've ever been in. I'm 53 now, and this is the most authentic I think I've ever been. I don't apologise for not being perfect. My hashtag is unapologetic writer, because, I'm not interested in grammar police. I'm kind of like, I'm more interested, if I'm reading something, I want to read what's been written as opposed to how it's been written. It's a form of expression and being able to get shit off your chest, and I found some amazing, when I've started writing and I've gone, wow, where did that come from? I'm not religious or anything like that, but it's almost like a form of prayer. It's almost like opening a gateway within. I always say, writing's opened doors within inside of me that I never knew existed. So for me, the process of writing the book, so I'm aiming to publish it this year. It's taken me 5 years to write the bleeding thing. Probably takes someone 5 minutes to read it. But the process, there's, for me, just doing that writing the book, I've had to revisit parts of my past. So I've finished my dad's part of the journey. I'm happy with that. What I didn't realise is, and this really took me by surprise last year. Last year took me a year to write 5 chapters. Just 5 chapters. I can normally do 5 chapters in 5 weeks. But I'd hit a point in my life, the story of my life, which I thought had not been a problem. So I'd had a termination. And when it come to that part of telling story, there were a block. I was like, I know I had a termination, but I can't remember it. I even rang my mum and family going, I did have one. I actually questioned myself, did I have one? It was completely. So it took me a long time to unpick that. So I'm writing about myself, but I was angry at the person I'm writing. I'm writing about my own experience, but finding myself getting really angry at that person because I wanted to shout at her, that past self, but I couldn't. And yeah, I don't see myself as a victim. But I made some really poor choices, none that I regret now, because I won't be where I'm at, who I am now and where I'm at now. But I do think we all have to take some sort of responsibility for our own emotions and feelings. Ultimately, and for me, the writing is my way of doing it.
I'm going to make a connection that makes sense in my mind, but I know you're unapologetic and you'll tell me if it's not a connection or not. But I'm drawing from something that I often tell folks, and it's that sometimes you just need somebody to talk to. But when it comes to trauma, so I'm a combat veteran, when it comes to trauma, sometimes we don't have somebody we feel safe and comfortable talking to about it. I'll give them a journal and say, if you don't have someone to talk to yourself. And this is one way to do it. So I love that you share journaling and having the conversation with yourself. But that thread goes from that conversation to that GP who sat and listened to you. Because another thing that I've heard, I think it was author Brene Brown, says that sometimes people just need a good listening to. And I can see the journaling being just that. You're just listening to yourself. There's not somebody sitting across the table
Give
from
me
you.
feedback. Sometimes you don't want feedback.
Yeah.
My kids will come to me for advice and I'll say, right, do you want me to listen or do you want any advice? There's a big difference.
Yeah.
So they'll come to me with their problems and I might jump and say, oh, and they'll go, I don't, or they'll come to me with a problem and I'll say, what do you think? They hate it when I say that. And I hate it when you do that, Mum, and I went, no, but it's important. You can, we can seek out advice of everybody, can't we? But it's got to be congruent, whatever as answers and solutions are, have got to be congruent with us. And I think the only way you can do that is I don't know. I find it really weird still now. I feel like an evangelicist, promoting, power of writing, but I advocate it myself. I was only saying to a woman last week, get a journal out. And she was coming up with, she's saying, and why do I do this and why do I do that? And I went, write them questions down and keep writing it down and it'll start coming to you. It's like the more you write that one question out, the more it starts revealing itself. And I do believe that we all have answers to our own problems. We just need to dig deep for them.
Absolutely. So in your story, you had I'll call it the forced reflection, your sanction.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after that, you turned to having conversations with yourself, more reflection, listening to yourself, learning about yourself. Then one day that GP, you had somebody else just listen to you.
It's just somebody who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that's hard to come by, especially on a state where I grew up. There was a lot of deprivation. Honestly, I've been to university, after getting expelled from school, I've been to university, my life is, it's bonkers. I think it's a bit bonkers, to be fair. I've been putting on social media, Valley Girl to UN, just being here, things like that don't happen to me. I found it as well through writing poetry. I love, and I've also found that through writing, I can do a good poem if I'm angry. So I wrote a poem. It's just been published in a performance magazine today, and it's post-traumatic growth. That's what it's called. So I'll share a link with you after. But I love my poem. That's a way of expressing my feelings. Yeah.
Well, that's almost like you knew what I was going to ask next. I want to dive into post-traumatic growth. I have my own sort of understanding of it from my personal story. Mm-hmm. I'd love for you to share with us, when you say post-traumatic growth, here's what you mean.
I think I've only recently come across post-traumatic growth, and it were a few months ago. And when I read about it, because everyone talks about post-traumatic stress and, mm-hmm. people, turn to drugs or substance misuse, because of this horrific life event and what have you. And the people I work, my job is working with people who are rough sleeping on streets. That's the kind of work I do. I see a lot of trauma. It were almost like I'd found a word to describe my experience. When I read about post-traumatic growth, I thought, wow, there's 5 pillars, I think, if I understand it. I'm just learning about it. And it's that self-discovery, connectedness. I think post-traumatic growth is something that happens within you. It can't be done to you. I know I've developed and grown as a person. And I wouldn't have done had it not been for the adverse experiences I've been through. Mm. You just think, well, things can't get any worse, can they? Another saying of mine is, shit happens, it's what you do with it that counts. Mm. And I've always thought that, if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same outcome. As I say, sorry, I saw this feature and I just thought, that's what I went, like I said, I didn't follow any 12, I got discharged with no aftercare. I've never done any drug rehabilitation program. I've not done any, the steps or anything like that. I never attended any support groups to do with me substance misuse. As far as I was concerned, I just had a bit of a shit deal and dealt with it and, got cracked on with it. Didn't make a big deal about it. Just, the shit happened and moved on, trying to make best as I could. And then I read about post-traumatic growth and I thought, that's it. And then when I think about post-traumatic, and no one talks about it, and from what I'm reading, it's relatively new. People are still learning more about it. But I see post-traumatic growth in a lot of people who I work with in recovery community. And I feel like I'm on a bit of a mission. Because the narrative around addiction is really negative. And actually, I think there's a hell of a lot of positives. The amount of people who coped better during COVID as a result of people who've not, learned. You go through a journey of self-discovery, don't you? I think, once you've, particularly around addiction, you've got, you have to go through a process of self-discovery and you learn some better coping strategies and what have you. I think normal lay people who haven't had to develop coping strategies really struggle, for example, like during COVID, whereas, I don't know, there's something about resilience, resilience and understanding what resilience is and being able to bounce back instead of breaking, mm-hmm. Learning to bounce instead of break.
Got a 2-part question.
Go on.
So you shared, now that you've learned about post-traumatic growth and you look back on your journey and the journey of those that you're serving, and you see post-traumatic growth sticking out as this is it. What are some examples from your journey where you see those elements of post-traumatic growth?
As I say, I'm still learning about it and thinking, working out how that applies to me and my journey. Mm-hmm. Depends what your trauma is into, childhood trauma. I would have always said, I didn't have a traumatic childhood when I look, because it were normal. A lot of them behaviours were normal. normalised. It's not till I look back now and go, that really weren't normal. And I can see now how I reacted. You know, I'm deeply intuitive and highly sensitive. I always have been, but I never realised it was a result of that, some of them trauma experiences. It's that intuitive growth, I think. It's an odd one to answer.
I gotta just share, because you just connected some dots for me in that I worked on my trauma, and I'm actually still I just started a whole new trauma recovery program. But you said that you never looked at, your childhood as traumatic. It was just normal. And for me, my combat experience, that was just what it is. Like, it's just normal. And I never really looked at what I went through as, oh, that was a traumatic event. And I've started, like, since I'm working on my trauma, like, I get it. I see those as traumatic events now, but connecting the dot to, well, at the time I was just thinking that was just the normal experience.
Absolutely.
So I'm taking that away from this conversation. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. Because in my work, it were about 10 years ago, they moved the domestic abuse services. So I facilitate peer-led groups, recovery groups for people in recovery. And the service manager said, oh, we want to set up a group for survivors of domestic abuse. And I'm like, I don't know much about domestic abuse, but I ain't got a problem, doing that. So we put this event together, bringing together all these women. There are about 30 women all come together. It's the first time we've done it, around, had conversations with people who lived experience of domestic abuse. And I sat in that room, and I know I'm like a sponge. I really have to look after myself because I can absorb people's energy. And it was like, pow, that session, when women were sharing, it was like, pow, pow, it was like I was being punched all over emotionally. Because the women talked about being worried about the children and the children witnessing abuse. And then I realised I were a child. I witnessed domestic abuse, but it were normal to me. And then that's when I learned about, believe it or not, only 10 years ago, that the relationship that I was in was coercive and abusive. And again, there's all these behaviours and all these things that go on. A majority of people just blithely life thinking it's normal, and it's fucking not normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all them times I thought I was going crazy. The drugs didn't help. But certainly that relationship didn't help. It was extremely, and unfortunately, I'm still bound by DNA. I have 2 children with my ex-partner. And I find it really challenging to see them same behaviours play out with my kids who are now adults. Oh, bless them, are struggling with same manipulation and what have you. But I just think it's normal, and it's like, no, it's not. And it does have an impact on you, and it does have an impact on how you think and how you feel, and obviously then how you react to certain situations. So sometimes I think it's just having to go back and rewind and look at your past self and make peace with that and understand, why you might have made poor choices. Actually, it's not understandable you made that poor choice then.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're at right at that time. I just see things completely different now.
Yeah. I'm sitting over, supposed to be, doing a podcast interview, and I'm just reflecting on my own story. So the fact that I saw what were actually traumatic events in combat as just normal, that fueled the locking those emotions, that trauma in a box and not dealing with them and not asking for help, because I thought it was normal and I shouldn't be having these feelings. And why are they? No, this is normal. So that's one, oh my, yeah. So there's that. Oh, I had another thought too, but I lost it. So I'm just so wrapped up listening and conversing. There was a quote that I want to share with you though.
Okay.
It's one that I've grabbed onto from a good friend and colleague. I've probably shared it on past episodes as well. But Dr. Jeff Lickenbach, he says that the positive exists and it's worth growing. And I always try to remind myself of that. The positive does exist. So I'm curious if you have an example or story where you've seen a positive with somebody you're serving, you're supporting, and bringing the concept, the framework, the paradigm of post-traumatic growth.
I see it. I've not approached people, and that's why I want to, bring that concept into Sheffield Recovery Community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So because I do think it sheds a different light on people's experiences. Honestly, like I said before, we've got, there's a lady called Ruth, who turned to alcohol after her husband died. She's everybody's auntie. She's lovely. But she's doing work and giving back now, doing stuff she'd never dreamed of doing. Mm-hmm. There's another lady, Alison, in her 50s, who got caught stealing vodka from a really posh supermarket by a security guard. She was absolutely mortified. But again, best thing that ever happened to her, because as well as charging her, mm-hmm. he also gave her a telephone number for an alcohol service. Mm. And now she's a support worker. She's one of the ladies who took part in Mulcair's research project. Mm-hmm. So I look at, people who are in recovery, and I've been doing this for a long time now. And I look at a lot of my peers who've done, started out volunteering, no jobs, education behind them, started volunteering, using their lived experience, who are now working in treatment provider services. They're giving, they're living proof that mm-hmm. growth is possible after adversity. Mm-hmm. And instead of, and although sometimes them adverse experiences result in us doing negative things, don't make us bad people. And I think it's important to recognise that there's more to a person than their actions. Mm-hmm. I think talking about post-traumatic growth puts a different lens on how we could be viewing recovery, mm-hmm. especially around addiction.
Mm-hmm. And now, a pause from our usual programming to shine a light on an event where stars align for a cause that's truly close to our hearts. It's that time of year again for the second annual Celebrity Luncheon, where the glimmer of celebrity meets the glow of goodwill, all set against a backdrop of culinary delights and spirited competition. Now join us as we mix the allure of fame with the earnestness of substance use prevention, turning the tables to serve not just unforgettable meals, but also a message of hope and advocacy. This isn't just any luncheon. It's a gathering of hearts and minds, celebrities and luminaries, all united for a singular cause. Be part of a day where compassion is the main course and advocacy is the dessert. See which of your favorite stars from last year's bash are back to spice things up and who will take home the coveted award for top tips and best designed apron. Mark your calendars for April 19th at the St. Petersburg Women's Club. Secure your spot at the table where every bite helps make a difference. For registration details, follow the link in our show notes or visit dfaf.org. Let's dine, shine, and stand together in the fight against substance use, one delicious dish at a time. Don't miss out on this feast of fun, food, and philanthropy.
This is wonderful. I love this conversation. A thought that just came to my mind too actually does go back to what I was going to share earlier as well. So, I shared that, you turn the light on, me connecting the dots to the fact I saw my combat experience, my trauma as normal, and that was a blocker barrier in me seeking help. And another sort of light bulb that went off for me in my own journey as well was realizing that when I looked at the research, the fact that I had been blown up and had a traumatic brain injury, the research shows I was more likely to also experience post-traumatic stress disorder. Ding, ding. Then the research also then shows that combat veterans with PTSD are more likely to have substance misuse issues. Ding, ding, ding. So then as I look back and see the research that tells that story and I check all those boxes for myself, it just helps me understand like, oh, okay, it takes some of the blame off of myself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which I think was very, not quite freeing, but lightened that weight that I was carrying.
But as well, don't you think, I think it'd have been nice for somebody to have told me that a lot sooner.
Yes.
I'm kind of like, you know, it's years since I picked up an illicit drug, and I'm still finding out things about myself. You know, and again, the journaling really, really helps with that. But yeah, I wish somebody had told me off at stuff I've learning. I found out the other day I went to a writing workshop. Have you ever heard of aphantasic? No, neither had I. So we were sat in a workshop, and there were a lady sat aside of me. She's a writing coach. She's a coach for people with neurodiversity issues. And they were just talking about imagination and things like that. And she says, I can't visualise things. I'm aphantasic. And I went, oh, what does that mean? And she said, well, you know, if you shut your eyes and you ask somebody to imagine an apple or whatever, can you do it? She says, because I can't. And I went, oh my God, neither can I. And I didn't realise it were a thing. And then after that, for about a week, I'm saying, can you shut your eyes and imagine an apple? And everyone's going, yeah, I can describe it to you and what have you. And I'm going, I can't. Not that it's a bad thing, it's just that I think differently, and it really started answering a lot of questions. You know, I struggle to visualise. Well, I can't visualise, you know, memories. So a picture of Mayfalder, for example, I've got a picture of him up. I can tell you what he looks like, but I can't visualise that in my head. Yeah, just, you know, 53 and finding that out, you know, that's a real life thing. And actually being aphantasic it explains a lot about how I react as well. So I'm not a cold person. I can be quite emotional, but I'm not emotionally stimulated by visual things in my head. So if somebody remembers a loved one and what have you, that could trigger loads of emotions. I don't do that because I can't visualise. I can conceptualise. I can write book. I can take myself back to that conceptually, but I can't take myself back visually. Which I think's worked out in my favour, but I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
So it just shows that I'll never give up learning about myself. Absolutely not. And I think when people start going, well, I have no else to learn, you know.
Always something to learn.
Always.
Another light bulb that went off for me, I'll call it a curiosity light bulb, is also linking back. I keep bringing up like my trauma work.
That's fine.
My combat trauma. And in the combat space, there's a term and growing body of research around moral injury.
Oh, okay.
Are you familiar with it?
Vaguely. I've just started reading a book. So this is why I say that it sparked me interest, and I thought I need to learn a little bit more about this. But explain.
Just my curiosity is, what would it look like? How could it be beneficial to bring that knowledge into the recovery space? Because I think back, I felt so much guilt and shame, like I'd done something morally wrong. I have that from combat, but then also just through addiction and the choices that, addiction drives us to make. I wonder if some folks also are experiencing the symptoms of moral injury. And if we bring that into the treatment and recovery space, how would that be beneficial?
1,000%. I think so. Everybody, I can look back now and I'm not, like I say, I've made some poor life choices, and a mother shouldn't be taking drugs, a mother shouldn't be taking kids in a car to go and score drugs, all that kind of stuff. But who are morality police?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Who are they?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. and again with the writing and what have you, it's took me a long time to be able to say, yeah, I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Without feeling like a fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the literal, I can't even say it. This is how crap I am at academia. People would say, oh, she's not a writer, or, or she can't do this, or she can't do that. And I'm kind of like, fuck you, who says I can't? I can do whatever I want,
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's who sets them bound, who makes the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That kind of gets to the biggest turning point in my journey. So I did the self-reflection, the journaling, and got back to figure out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
But then bring it kind of back to post-traumatic growth. I looked at what were my strengths. And so I leaned on my military strength. What made me a good soldier?
Mm-hmm.
Discipline, mission-oriented purpose, teamwork, that drive, and the resilience. And so then I applied those to my own personal growth. And I had this epiphany of that I could create and be whoever I wanted to be. So I found out who I was, but then I really got to thinking, well, what kind of man do I want to be? What does that person look like on a random Tuesday? How do they show up on Thursday afternoon at 4:00? And the more crystal clear I got with that picture of who I wanted to be, I was able to use those strengths to then grow into that person.
Mm. I see, when you talked earlier on about trying to work out who your identity,
Mm-hmm.
I ain't got a clue who I were or who I wanted to be. So if I look back on my drug using and upbringing and what have you, I've always had the gift of the gab. I can, I used to, so I kind of say now, so I work for local government. I don't practice no airs and graces. I don't care if you're head of service or a service user, you will get the same treatment from me. I will treat you with the same respect. In fact, to be honest with you, I get on more comfortably with people on street. Mm-hmm. I'm quite straight talking, and I'm not ashamed of that. Neither, I won't mince my words. So, I've gone from being somebody who's like, watch what I was saying, just so I didn't upset or offend somebody, to, I am mindful, obviously, I don't want to upset people, but I know I'm not responsible for their feelings. If I've not hurt them or said something horrible to them, it's not my fault they're feeling like that. Or if someone finds me, intimidating or, I don't know. I just think that's not, before I'd internalise that and go, what have I done wrong? I'm more mindful that's their shit. Mm-hmm. I've learned, understanding what feelings to own and what to disregard, and what not to hold on to. I think that's really cool. I've lost my thread, but it's coming back to it, and it's something that you said about who I want to be. Mm-hmm. I want to be that person, and I think I do that. That encourages, see something in people and encourages them to do stuff. And people do say that, Tracey, I wouldn't have done this for you. And I'll go, you would have. Eventually, or I hate it when someone goes, oh, if, when they came along to our recovery centre, you know, we got them clean. And I think, you fucking didn't get them clean. They got themselves clean. You might have helped them, but ultimately it's them who don't work. Don't take away that work from them. You know, it's them who've achieved sobriety. You know, I know you might have helped him, but not claiming success for somebody's recovery. I think that's really unfair and distasteful, to be fair. It's just, it's that feeling of feeling empowered and people seeing the potential that they've got in themselves. I think is more is quite life changing for people. I think it is. It worked for me. I can only go on my own, but that's what I kind of practice. When I'm out and about, you know, if I see an opportunity and I think, Rita would be good at this. Rita, have you thought about doing this? Or, you know, if there's any opportunities going, network, you know, so I used to be a bit of a social butterfly, buying and selling stuff, you know, I was really good at it. I do it now. I'm really good at that now, but I just do it in a professional manner. They're all transferable skills, but for positive rather than negative now.
My take, like it matters. My take, I know you already said you don't care what people think. My take is what I'm kind of seeing is that your natural state of curiosity create your paradigm. You're always curious, and you now have learned to be curious about the positive.
Absolutely.
Look for the positive.
Are you a therapist? Are you sure you're not a therapist? Because you've just got me to then thinking, yeah, I have always been really curious. You know, I have always been that, but I still am now. You know, if someone says you can't, I'll go, why not?
You can be curious with a negative slant, like critical.
Yeah.
You could be curious with a neutral, just, I wonder. Or you could be curious like, I wonder where the good is.
And that's what I'm thinking around this post-traumatic. As I say, it's a new concept to me and I'm still learning about it. But I think, you know, everyone's we talk about recovery from this trauma response or as being a trauma response all the time, which makes it seem really negative. When in actual fact, I've seen evidence, tons of evidence, myself included, of people who've actually flipped that traumatic events and periods in their lives into positives and are actually a force of good. You know, so how do you measure that? Because that's one of the other things as well. You know, if we were looking at investing in recovery and recovery communities, you know, it all comes down to money. Let's be honest. How do we evidence that by investing in somebody's recovery is actually you're investing in future communities by doing that? So that's why I'm really keen. I'm no researcher. I don't want to be. I had all on just finishing my degree at university. When Mulka said, you should do a PhD. I'm like, no way, knock yourself out, not interested. But yeah, I'm certainly, I just want to see if we can coin that concept a little bit more and brand it, because people like a brand. They like to call something, don't they?
The power of the positive.
Yeah. But yeah, you've got to, I always think what's worse can happen. But I do have to have a word with myself quite frequently.
That's why you have the website.
Yeah. Honestly, you know, and again, that just started out by journaling. And at first I never shared it. I just wanted somewhere to put, you know, me writing and what have you. And now it's gone from, I think there's about 300 posts on there. And I always say, you know, free to, you know, subscribe. I don't do any spammy shit. You know, I'll send out an email if I've written a new blog, which might be once a month, or a poem, or I'm just updating on my writing. That's it. It's just literally, hiya, quick check-in, this is where I'm at. So my last one, we're like, wow, can you believe it? I'm going to UN. Been struggling with my book a little bit, but I broke through that, you know, and that kind of, I don't know, my writing seems to resonate with people.
Because it's real.
I don't bullshit or sugarcoat it. It is what it is.
Your curiosity, you've connected your natural curiosity, not just changed it to a positive paradigm, but you've plugged it into your heart.
It's definitely from art.
A caring curiosity.
Yeah, and if somebody had said, it's really weird because I've always had a massive, I used to get I've always been really sensitive, but that never come across as a kid because I was always aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think I used to say to my mum, I was just misunderstood. I weren't a bad kid, I was just misunderstood because they didn't get me.
Mm-hmm.
I used to lash out and perhaps I didn't react, but I weren't taught different ways to react. That's why it were.
Yeah. That's a big part of your post-traumatic growth story, is that growing up, your curiosity was challenged and pushed down.
Oh, 1,000%.
Your heart, your reactiveness because of the response from your heart was pushed back. And
I remember as a kid, having a fight with a young boy. Well, it weren't a fight. He pushed me over and I fell over and I ran into the house crying. And my dad were home from pub. And he come in and my dad only had to raise his voice a little bit and I'd be terrified. He'd never laid a finger on me in all his life, but he were a terrifying guy. And so I saw my dad and I just thought, he's gonna go out and sort everything. He dragged me outside and said, "Where is he?" So I had to point to this young lad. He went, "You, Oreo." So this kid comes walking over with his head down. And my dad said, "Hit him." And I was terrified. This kid was like 2 years older than me. I'd never had a fight before. I'm 7. And it's still one of my most vivid memories. I'm thinking, shit, if I hit it, I'm in a no, that's what I was just thinking, I'm in a no-win situation here. And my dad said, "Hit him." And he pushed me into him and we just had this little scuffle and he dragged him away. Anyway, he swore at him and just said, "Come near me again." But my dad dragged me into the house and he sat me down and I was still sobbing, really shook up. And he said, "Listen," he went, "never, ever, ever let anybody trample on you. Always stand up for yourself, even if you're going to lose. Never, never back down." So I grew up with that mantra. Like, I've got to be this person. So at school, I'd be going out fighting. I'd be only girl with a gang of lads going fighting. And everyone would go like, "She's mad." I weren't mad. It was just, I'd got this persona that I thought I had to be this odd person, when deep down I were soft as shit, really. But I couldn't break free from that identity, do you know what I mean? Whereas, so now, if someone says, "Oh," I know I used to say, I used to think I were aggressive, and actually now I think, no, I weren't aggressive all the time, I were assertive. And there's a big difference between assertive and aggressiveness. And I can hold my own way. Majority of meetings that I have are male dominated. I can hold my own way and have plenty of banter, with men, but I still get my point across without feeling intimidated or feeling like I've got to be somebody. I'm not. And I think I've got further in life being my authentic self.
That's why I'm here at the UN. That's why you're here at the UN.
I know, the thought.
Being yourself. Being true to you. Yeah. Well, we've been chatting for quite a while. I have no idea how long we've been talking.
I know.
But we should probably wind down. And so I'd like to just open up the space, take as much time as you want. But if you were to send out a message to a global audience of folks that work in prevention, treatment, and recovery, what would your one message be?
Oh, you are definitely going to have to edit this and cut this bit and what have you. I think, don't give up on people. I would say, don't give up on people, particularly those who've given up on themselves, because I genuinely do believe that everybody's got potential to change. They just need that support and belief and encouragement around them to be able to do that.
That.
Done.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For sharing your story, your wisdom, your experience, and having such a a real conversation with me.
You're welcome.
What?
It's been a nice, it has been. Thank you.
Yeah.
That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. Together, we are stronger.